The numbers didn't float. They burned. They were etched into the air above Marcus Hale's head in cold red serif font, impossible to ignore or close one's eyes against. Remaining lifespan: 31 years, 4 months, 12 days. The digits pulsed with a rhythmic, sickly grace, ticking down every second like a countdown timer on a bomb that only he could see. Adrian Locke stood in the shadowed alcove of the alleyway, his breath catching in a throat raw from disuse and despair. He had no money, no job, no future, and now, apparently, no sanity. The weight of the city pressed down on him, the crushing debt of rent, the betrayal of the firm, the hollow ache of being replaced by someone cheaper and younger. But this was something else. This was a glitch in the matrix of his ruined life. He stared at Marcus Hale, watching the numbers drop. Marcus stumbled, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with sudden, terrifying recognition. He saw Adrian seeing it. What is this? Marcus gasped, his voice thin and reedy. Adrian stepped forward, not out of fear, but out of a sudden, sharp clarity. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled pack of cigarettes he couldn't afford to smoke, and shoved them toward the man.
"Help me!"
Falling to his knees. Adrian knelt beside him, the city lights reflecting in Marcus's dilating pupils.
"I can help you."
His voice steady despite the tremor in his hands.
"But you have to give it up."
Marcus looked at Adrian, really looked at him, for the first time. His skin was gray, sweating profusely. He grabbed Adrian's wrist with a strength that belied his frailty. His fingers were ice cold. "Take it," Marcus rasped. "Please, I don't want them anymore. It hurts. The counting. It hurts." As Marcus's grip tightened, the world dissolved into white static. A translucent contract materialized in Adrian's vision, floating between them like a ghost of light. Lifespan transfer available. Below it, details scrolled rapidly. Seller, Owen Maris. No, wait. The name shifted. Seller, Marcus Hale. Adrian blinked. The name corrected itself. Offered lifespan: 5 years. Price requested: a warm meal, a clean bed, and no pain. Adrian stared at the text, but his body moved before his mind could process the absurdity. He nodded once. "I accept," he whispered. Marcus exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. The red numbers above his head vanished instantly. His body went limp in Adrian's arms, the tension draining from his face, leaving it peaceful for the first time in decades. The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian sat on the wet pavement, the cold seeping through his clothes, and watched the numbers fade from his sight, leaving behind a terrifying new truth. Time wasn't just passing, it was currency, and he had just made his first deposit. 3 days earlier, the rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. Adrian Locke stood under the awning of the office building he'd worked at for 7 years, watching the water cascade off the metal lip and splash onto the pavement. He held a cardboard box containing a potted plant that was already dead, a stress ball that had lost its resilience, and a stapler with a missing key. Inside the lobby, behind the glass doors, he could see his former colleagues laughing at something on their phones. They didn't look up. They didn't care. Adrian touched the door handle but didn't turn it. He knew what was inside. The severance package had been thinner than expected, and the reason for his termination had been vague, polite, and utterly final. Restructuring. That was the corporate word for "you are expendable, Adrian." He turned. Owen Maris stood beside him, leaning against a black SUV that cost more than Adrian would earn in 10 lifetimes. Owen was older, dressed in a suit that fit perfectly, his face lined with the kind of wrinkles that come from smiling when you want to scream. He was an acquaintance, nothing more. A man Adrian had shared a coffee with once at a conference, a man who smelled of expensive cologne and criminal enterprises.
"Owen."
He kept his voice level.
"I didn't expect to see you here. I heard you were let go."
Owen said. He didn't ask why. He knew the business.
"Bad luck. Or bad timing. Does it matter?"
He looked at the box in his hands.
"What do you want, Owen?"
Owen smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I want to offer you a job. Not at my firm. At something else. Something more tangible." Adrian laughed. A short, dry sound.
I'm an insurance analyst, Owen. I don't do else. I do risk assessment and policy limits. Exactly.
He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a murmur that cut through the sound of the rain. You understand risk better than anyone, and you're currently at zero capital. That makes you desperate. And desperation is the most honest motivator there is. Adrian looked at the Owen, extended a hand, palm up, waiting for Adrian to place the box down, or at least acknowledge the gesture. Adrian kept his grip tight on the cardboard handle, his knuckles white.
I'm listening, then listen closely.
Owen replied. He adjusted his cufflinks, gold catching the dim streetlight.
There is a market. It's not on any stock exchange, it doesn't have ticker symbols, but it has value. Real value. I don't have capital to invest. I have a dead plant and a stapler that works half the time. You have precision.
Owen countered. He tilted his head, studying Adrian's face as if reading a map. You see patterns in data where others see noise. You calculate risk for a living. Now imagine risk isn't about money, imagine it's about survival. Adrian felt a cold spike in his chest.
You're talking about insurance. I'm talking about eternity.
He stepped closer, invading Adrian's personal space. The smell of his cologne was cloying, masking the scent of rain and damp wool.
And I need someone who won't panic when the numbers drop. Someone who understands that every second is an asset. And why me?
His voice was steady, but his mind raced. Why this moment? Why him?
Because you have nothing to lose. Look at you. You're standing in the rain with a box of trash. You are already dead to the world. In my world, that's an advantage. You don't care about reputation. You don't care about legacy. You just care about staying alive.
Adrian looked down at his shoes, soaked through by the Seattle drizzle.
What's the job? Advisor.
Consultant. We call it the Immortality Exchange. We deal in high net worth individuals who are afraid of ending. They want to extend their timeline. They want to buy more time. And we need someone to structure the deals, to assess the risk of transfer, to make sure the ledger balances. Time is a commodity.
The absurdity of it made him want to laugh, but he couldn't. Not anymore. Not after the alley. Not after Marcus. It is the only commodity that matters, Owen corrected. Money is paper. Power is politics. Time is life. And life can be traded. Adrian stared at Owen. The man's eyes were dark, unreadable. There was a hunger there, deep and ancient.
How does it work? That's not your concern yet.
He turned away, walking toward the SUV.
Your concern is whether you want to stay broke and forgotten, or if you want to hold the keys to the city that never sleeps.
Adrian watched him go. The door of the black SUV clicked shut. The engine purred to life, a low, menacing growl. Before we get into the story, do me a quick favor. Like this video, subscribe, and comment what story you want to see next. Now, let's begin. Adrian stood alone in the rain, the box heavy in his hands. He looked at the building behind him, the place that had discarded him like trash. Then he looked at the retreating taillights of Owen's car. He walked back inside the lobby. The security guard didn't look up from his phone. Adrian dropped the box into a recycling bin near the exit and walked out the side door toward the alley where he had made his first deal. He needed to think. He needed to remember the numbers. He needed to find Owen again. The safe house was not safe. It was a basement apartment in a district that the maps didn't bother to name. The walls were thin, vibrating with the bass of music from upstairs. Adrian sat on a mattress that smelled of mildew and old sweat, his eyes closed. He focused on the memory of the red numbers above Marcus Hale's head. The clarity, the simplicity. Take the years. I don't want them. It had been so easy, so natural, like breathing. But now he was alone, in the dark, with no one to transfer to, no one to take his time, and no one to give him any. He was empty. There was a knock at the door, 3 sharp raps, then silence. Adrian stood up. He didn't ask who it was. He knew. He walked to the door and opened it. Owen Maris stood in the hallway holding 2 paper cups of coffee. Steam rose from them, curling into the damp air.
You're awake.
He stepped inside without invitation, handing 1 cup to Adrian.
Are you tracking me? I'm monitoring assets.
Owen corrected. He took a sip of his coffee.
You looked like you were about to fall apart. I thought you might need caffeine. I don't need coffee. I need answers. What is the Immortality Exchange? Really?
Owen leaned against the doorframe, looking bored.
It's a private club for people who refuse to die. We facilitate transfers. Legal, regulated, and discreet. Or so we tell them. And you need an analyst. I need someone who understands the cost.
Owen replied. He looked at Adrian, his gaze intense.
Most people think immortality is a gift. It's not. It's a burden, a weight. You have to carry it, you have to justify it, and you have to make sure the people buying it can afford it. Not in money. In years.
Adrian felt a chill run down his spine.
You're selling lives. I'm selling time.
He stepped closer, grabbing Adrian's shoulder. His grip was tight, painful. Adrian did not pull away from Owen's grip. He stood perfectly still, letting the pain anchor him in the present moment, far removed from the numbness of his eviction notice and the hollow ache in his chest where his dignity used to be. The steam from their coffee mingled in the damp air between them, a fragile barrier against the encroaching gray light of the hallway.
We are not selling lives.
His voice was quiet, devoid of the fear that should have been there. We are managing assets. There is a difference. Owen narrowed his eyes. For a second, the mask of the polished businessman slipped, revealing the predator underneath.
You sound like you already know how this works, Adrian. How is that possible? You spent 38 years counting pennies and filing claims for people who didn't care if they lived or died. I know what it costs to keep an engine running.
He took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter, scalding, and real.
I know when something is failing. I know when someone is bleeding out their resources. And I know that you are looking for a way to stop the bleeding.
He stepped back into the room, setting his cup on the edge of the water-stained table.
We are all bleeding out.
The rich. They bleed faster. They have more to lose, and they have the means to steal it back. We facilitate the theft, Adrian. Legally, ethically, well, morally gray, but legally sound. The contracts hold, the courts uphold them, because who is going to sue? A man who sold his own time because he couldn't bear to watch his mother die, or a father who sold 10 years so his daughter could have a future. And what about the sellers? Who are they? Where do they come from?
Owen walked to the small, grimy window and looked out at the rain-slicked street below. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red, distant and untouchable. They are people who have reached their limit. People who are tired. People who look at the numbers and see a countdown they cannot win. They don't want money. Money is useless to a man who has everything and fears nothing but the end. They want rest. They want painlessness. They want to walk away clean. Adrian watched Owen's reflection in the glass. The older man's face was tight, strained. Even he looked tired.
You're selling oblivion. I'm selling choice.
Owen corrected. He turned back to face Adrian. His eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of something else. Recognition, perhaps, or shared misery. And you are the only person I know who can structure the exchange without losing his mind. You see the numbers, Adrian? Everyone else sees magic. They see miracles. But you see the ledger. You see the cost. Adrian felt a cold weight settle in his stomach, yet Owen seemed to know.
How do you know I can see them?
Owen smiled. It was a thin, dangerous curve of the lips.
I don't need to know. I need to trust. And I trust desperation. Desperation makes men honest. Desperation makes men precise.
He walked closer, his shoes clicking on the concrete floor. The Billionaire Club is gathering next week. The top 10 members of the Immortality Exchange, they are restless. There are rumors of instability, of leaks, of sellers who refuse to honor their contracts. We need a controller, someone to audit the flow, to ensure that the time given matches the time taken. Adrian looked at his hands. And if I say no, Owen shrugged.
Then you go back to your apartment. You eat canned soup. You wait for the world to shrink around you until there is nothing left but rent and regret. Or you can come with me. You can walk into that room and tell the most powerful people on earth how much their lives are worth, and you will never have to worry about a bill again.
Adrian closed his eyes. 0.
What is the entry fee?
Owen laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound.
Nothing. You have nothing to give. That is why you are perfect.
Adrian opened his eyes. He looked at Owen, really looked at him, Seeing the cracks in the suit, the tension in the jaw, the fear buried deep in the dark pools of his irises, Owen was just another man trying to outrun the clock. Just another asset in a portfolio that didn't care if he broke.
I will do it, but on my terms. I don't want money, I don't want power. I want access. Full access to every ledger, every contract, every soul in your network. If we are going to balance the books, I need to see the whole picture.
Owen studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, filled only by the distant hum of traffic and the drip of water from the ceiling. Then, Owen nodded once, a sharp, decisive jerk of his chin that severed the silence. "Done," he said. "Access is granted upon your first successful audit. Until then, you are a consultant, a ghost. You don't exist unless I say so." Adrian stepped around the small table, the floorboards creaking under his weight. He didn't care about the noise. The noise was real. It grounded him in the physical world, keeping the ethereal glow of the numbers at bay for just a moment longer.
And my salary?
Owen took another sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving Adrian's face.
You said you didn't want money. So what do you want? A title? A corner office with a view of the glittering spires above us? I want to understand the mechanism.
He walked past Owen toward the door, pausing only when he was close enough to smell the stale tobacco on Owen's breath.
I need to know how the transfer works. Is it voluntary? Forced? Does the seller feel it? Does it matter?
He turned, falling into step behind Adrian as the younger man headed for the exit. The result is the same. 10 years for a meal, 50 for a bed, a century for a life debt. The mechanics are complex, regulated by the exchange. We don't touch the hardware, we just move the data. He turned to face Owen, his expression blank. Owen's smile was thin and devoid of humor. There are no leaks in the billionaire club. There are only transactions that have not yet been finalized. You will not find coercion, Adrian. You will find desperation, and you will balance them against greed. That is your job, not justice. Balance. Adrian looked down the long, dimly lit corridor. At the end of it, the exit door was visible, bathed in the gray light of the street outside. He could feel the pull of the numbers, a hum in the back of his mind, waiting for him to look up, to see who else was nearby, who else was dying, who else was ready to sell.
And if I find someone who can't pay, then they stop being a client,
Owen said.
and start being a product.
Adrian didn't react to the threat. He simply nodded. Owen pulled a slip of paper from his pocket and handed it to Adrian. "You will meet him there, tomorrow night. Don't be late, and don't try to run. If you leave my employ, the exchange will know, and they are not as lenient as I am." Adrian took the paper. The edges were crisp, expensive. It felt like a contract already signed in blood he hadn't yet spilled. Adrian asked.
He doesn't have a name.
Owen said. He leaned against the wall opposite Adrian, crossing his arms.
He goes by the auditor. You'll recognize him by the numbers. They don't stop for anyone. Not even him. Look for the man whose eyes are constantly calculating.
Adrian folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. The movement was smooth, practiced. He had done this 1,000 times with insurance forms. Now he was folding his own life into a similar shape. Adrian asked.
That you are here to balance the books.
Owen said. He pushed off the wall and walked back toward Adrian's apartment door, gesturing for Adrian to precede him. "And that time is running out for both of us." Adrian opened the door. The cold air from the hallway rushed in, biting at his exposed skin. He stepped over the threshold, leaving the warmth of the coffee and the promise of a new hell behind him. He didn't look back. He knew Owen was watching. He could feel the weight of the older man's gaze on the back of his neck.
Good luck, Adrian.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Adrian closed the door. The lock clicked with a finality that echoed in the small room. Then he turned back to the apartment. Truly empty. No more past to haunt him. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. The skyscrapers pierced the clouds like needles, injecting their golden light into the sky. He could see the faint, glowing numbers hovering above the distant towers. Thousands of them. Millions. A sea of time waiting to be spent. He closed his eyes and focused on the sensation of the 5 years he had gained. It was a warmth in his chest, a steady rhythm in his blood. It felt like power. It felt like freedom. It felt like a debt he hadn't yet paid. He opened his eyes and looked at his hands again. They were still steady, but now they were steady with purpose. He knew what he had to do. He knew the cost of everything, and he knew that in this city, where the rich lived like gods and the poor burned their lives away for rent, time was the only currency that mattered. He picked up his coat from the back of the chair. It was worn, threadbare, but it was his. He put it on and fastened the buttons one by one. The rain in this city didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Adrian Locke stood under the awning of a closed pawn shop, watching the neon lights of the Billionaire Club bleed into the puddles on the pavement. It was 3 in the morning. The air smelled of wet asphalt and ozone, a sharp metallic tang that usually signaled an electrical storm, but tonight it felt heavier. Adrian had lost his job 4 hours ago. He had been fired for asking too many questions about actuarial tables that didn't exist. His partner had left him 2 days prior, taking the last of their savings with her. Now he was broke, ignored, and replaceable. He looked up at the towering spire of the Billionaire Club, piercing the low-hanging clouds. People inside lived like gods. They drank wine from glasses worth more than Adrian's annual salary, and laughed with teeth that had never known decay. Down here, ordinary people burned their lives away for rent, selling hours they couldn't afford to keep. Adrian felt the weight of his own mortality pressing against his ribs, a dull, familiar ache. He checked his watch. The second hand ticked forward, relentless, indifferent. A man stumbled out of the alleyway next to him, coughing violently. Adrian turned his head slightly. The man was old, his skin gray and translucent, clinging to sharp bones like parchment. As Adrian looked at him, numbers flickered into existence above the man's head, ghostly green digits that hovered in the rain-slicked air. Marcus Hale age, 46 remaining lifespan, 31 years, 4 months, 12 days transferable lifespan, 6 years. Adrian blinked. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands, expecting the hallucination to fade. It didn't. The numbers remained, steady and precise, floating above the ragged wool cap the man wore. Adrian looked around, half expecting someone else to see them, to scream, to call security, but the street was empty save for a stray dog sniffing a trash can.
Can I help you?
His voice rough from disuse. The man didn't look up. He leaned against the brick wall, sliding down until he hit the ground. His breathing was wet, ragged. "I'm tired," the man whispered. Adrian took a step closer. The numbers shifted slightly as the man's heart rate slowed.
"You are hurt." "No."
He looked up then, his eyes clouded with cataracts that seemed to see everything and nothing. "I'm done." Adrian felt a strange pull in his chest, a magnetic resonance he couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. He had spent 10 years analyzing risk for an insurance firm. He knew how to read the fine print of human existence. This man was a dying asset, and Adrian was, what? A liability with no collateral.
Why are you telling me this?
Marcus Hale reached out a trembling hand. His fingers were cold, stained with dirt and blood. "Because I don't want them," he said. He tapped his own temple, then pointed at the floating numbers above his head. "I don't want to carry it anymore." Adrian stared at the digits. 6 years. Transferable lifespan. 6 years. The concept was impossible. Yet here they were, glowing in the dark like a promise.
What are you? Someone who wants to rest?
Marcus Hale said. He pulled Adrian's hand toward his own wrist.
"Take the years. I don't want them."
A contract appeared in Adrian's vision. It wasn't written on paper. It was etched directly into his perception, crisp and white against the dark world. Lifespan transfer available seller. Owen Maris offered lifespan. 5 years price requested, a warm meal, a clean bed, and no pain. Adrian's breath hitched. The name Owen Maris meant nothing to him, yet the system presented it as a given condition. The price was trivial: food, shelter, the cessation of suffering. Adrian looked at the dying man. He looked at his own hollow cheeks, the dark circles under his eyes, the exhaustion that had settled into his bones since he lost everything. He didn't hesitate. Survival was not a luxury, it was a requirement.
I accept.
The words hung in the air between them. The contract pulsed once, then dissolved into light that streamed from Marcus Hale's forehead and into Adrian's chest. It felt like cold water rushing through his veins, sharp and invigorating. The gray pallor of his skin flushed with color. The ache in his lower back vanished. For the first time in years, Adrian felt light. Marcus Hale smiled. It was a peaceful, empty expression. His eyes closed. His chest rose once, then fell and stayed still. The numbers above him faded, leaving only the rain. Adrian stood there for a long moment, watching the body slow to cooling. He could feel it, 5 years of life humming in his cells, a reservoir of time he now owned. He understood the truth then with the clarity of an actuarial report. Time was the only currency everyone needed, and he had just become richer than governments. He pulled his coat tighter and walked away, leaving the body to the rain. He needed to find Owen Maris. Adrian Locke turned away from the cooling corpse, his mind racing not with horror, but with the cold, sharp clarity of a risk assessment model that had just found a new variable. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, but he didn't feel the cold. He felt the hum of those 5 extra years circulating in his blood, a steady, rhythmic thrumming that replaced the hollow ache of hunger and fatigue. He checked his watch again. The seconds ticked forward, indifferent to his transformation. He walked toward the subway entrance, his steps lighter than they had been in years. The city's underbelly lay beneath the gleaming spires of the wealthy, a labyrinth of forgotten infrastructure and shadowed corners where the laws of the surface world grew thin. Adrian needed to find Owen Maris. The name from the contract was his first clue, but he knew better than to trust a system without verifying the source. He had spent a decade dissecting fraudulent claims. He would not be so easily tricked now that he held the ultimate asset. The subway station smelled of stale urine and damp concrete. Adrian descended the stairs, emerging onto a platform that was rarely used after midnight. A single flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting long, jagged shadows against the tiled walls. He waited, watching the empty tracks. When the train arrived, it was not a public transit car but a rusted, unmarked freight vehicle pulled by an electric locomotive that seemed to run on no visible power source. The doors hissed open. Inside, a figure sat on a crate, illuminated by the dim amber glow of a lantern hanging from the ceiling. It was Eve Locke's old associate, a man whose face was obscured by the hood of a heavy coat. Adrian Locke, the voice rasped dry as parchment.
You've taken the first step. Most men run when they see the numbers. I don't run from data.
Stepping onto the train car, the doors closed behind him with a mechanical thud. And I don't run from debt. Who are you? The figure lowered his hood. It was Mara Voss. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently narrowed in suspicion. She held a notebook in one hand, a pen poised in the other. Mara Voss, she said.
Investigator, or at least I was, before the exchange started making people disappear.
Adrian nodded slowly.
I know who you are. You've been looking for the founder of the Immortality Exchange for 5 years. I have.
She stood up, her movements stiff, as if unused to travel.
And now you're standing here with 5 years of stolen time in your veins and a contract signed by a dead man, named Owen Maris. That name is a ghost story. He died decades ago.
Then why is he listed as the seller?
He leaned against the cold metal wall of the car, watching her.
And why did I just see numbers above a man's head that let me transfer them?
Mara Voss stared at him for a long moment, then she laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound.
You think you're special? You're just the next link in a chain that's been twisting since the turn of the century. The Immortality Exchange wasn't built by one man. It was built by a council, and Owen Maris was one of them. And where is he now?
Adrian asked. Mara Voss gestured to the window. Outside, the tunnel walls blurred past, replaced eventually by open sky and the dark, sprawling sprawl of the city's industrial district. They were miles from the financial center, miles from the safety of the grid.
He's hiding in plain sight, amongst the homeless, because he knows what happens to those who are found out. Who finds them out?
Adrian asked.
The billionaire club. The ones who live like gods upstairs are terrified of the ones who can stay alive forever downstairs. They funded the exchange, yes, but they also want to control it, And if a founder steps out of line?
Tapping her pen against her notebook, Adrian felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the train car.
So we're walking into a trap. No.
Her eyes locked onto his.
We're walking into the truth, and you need it if you want to survive what's coming. The rich aren't just watching anymore. They're buying. And they're hungry.
The train slowed, rattling as it approached a dead-end platform buried beneath layers of earth and steel. The doors opened. Adrian stepped out first, followed by Mara Voss. The air here was thick with the smell of coal smoke and old oil. Ahead of them, a line of tents and makeshift shelters clung to the side of a collapsed overpass.
This is the edge, home to everyone the city has discarded, and one man who holds the key to it all.
She led him through the maze of tarps and cardboard boxes. People stared as they passed, their eyes wide with hunger or fear. Adrian kept his head high, the new vitality in his body masking any sign of weakness. He was no longer just an insurance analyst, he was a player. Finally, Mara Voss stopped in front of a large tent made from reinforced canvas and patched with scavenged metal sheets. She knocked on the fabric 3 times.
Who is it?
A voice asked from within. It was old, weary, but steady. Mara, she said.
And a guest.
The tent flap lifted. Inside, the air was warm, smelling of dried sage and old paper. A single kerosene lamp burned on a crate serving as a table. Behind it sat an elderly man with hands that trembled slightly, stacking dice into precarious towers. His eyes were clouded with cataracts, but they seemed to look directly at Adrian. Mara, the man said.
You bring a guest with time still burning in his blood. I can smell it. It smells like ozone and fresh ink.
Adrian stepped forward, keeping his posture relaxed. I am Adrian Locke. You are Owen Maris? The old man did not look up from his dice. Names are costumes we wear until they rot. Call me Silas if you must, or call me the one who made the mistake that let you in. He set a die down with deliberate care.
Marcus Hale is dead? Already? Yes, he gave 5 years. I accepted.
Silas laughed, a dry, rattling sound.
5 years. A pittance. But enough to start the fire. Tell me, Adrian Locke, do you understand why Marcus died happily? He was dying. I removed his pain. No.
Silas said. He finally looked up, his blind eyes staring into Adrian's soul.
He gave them because he chose to. That is the secret they keep in the billionaire club. They think time is a commodity to be hoarded. It is not. It is a current. You do not own the river. You only survive the flood.
Mara Voss stepped into the tent, her hand resting on the hilt of a knife hidden beneath her coat. We're here for the truth, Silas, not poetry. The exchange. How did it start? Silas smiled, revealing gums that were largely bare.
The exchange? You think it was an exchange? Money for life? No, it was a leak. A crack in the dam 50 years ago. A group of us, 10 men and women who had discovered the formula for cellular stasis, realized that death was not inevitable. It was engineering. Who found the formula?
His pulse remained steady, though his mind raced through the implications. This was not magic. It was science applied to biology. And if it was science, it could be replicated.
The first founder, myself. But I am broken now. My time is almost up. The body rejects the gift after 30 years of use. That is the cost. To give years, you must have them. To keep them, you must take them from others. It is a parasitic equation.
Adrian felt a cold knot form in his stomach. So it's not immortality, it's theft. It is balance, Silas corrected. You cannot create energy, only move it. We discovered that the human soul has mass, time is its weight. When you steal it, you lighten the load of the receiver and burden the giver until they collapse. Marcus Hale was willing to pay. Others are not. Mara Voss slammed her hand on the table, making the dice jump. Then why help us? Why give us the formula? Silas turned his clouded eyes toward Mara. Because I am tired of running. Because I want to see if you have the stomach for what comes next. The Billionaire Club has found out about me. They are coming for the ledger, the original records, the formulas that allow for transfer without a willing seller. Adrian leaned forward, his interest piqued.
Transfer without consent? Coercion or accident? The rich upstairs. They do not want to live forever. They want to ensure their children never die.
They are building a dynasty of gods, and they need more fuel. Your 5 years were a drop in the ocean. They will need oceans.
Adrian processed this. The implications were staggering. If time could be transferred involuntarily, the value of a human life on the open market would skyrocket. Not for labor, but for biological material. He was an insurance analyst. He understood risk, leverage, and asset valuation. This was not just a crime, it was a new global economy.
And you want us to stop them?
Silas shook his head.
No. I want you to take the ledger. It is hidden in the foundation of the Billionaire Club's headquarters, the Spire. If you destroy it, the system collapses, time flows back to its owners. Chaos.
And if we don't? Then they continue to bleed the world dry until there is nothing left but them.
Silas said.
And themselves.
Adrian looked at Mara. She was tense, her eyes darting around the tent as if expecting an attack. He could feel the hum of his 5 years, a reservoir of power he didn't know how to use effectively yet. But he knew one thing. He could not let this knowledge die with Silas.
What do you need from us?
Adrian asked.
Why Mara? Why me? Because Mara has nothing left to lose.
Silas said.
And you, Adrian Locke, have just realized that death is a price, not a destiny. You will pay any price to stay in the game.
Adrian felt a flicker of recognition. The old Adrian would have walked away. The new Adrian saw the leverage.
The ledger contains the formula for involuntary transfer. It contains the list of names.
Every person who has ever given time willingly. Every debt owed. It is their insurance policy against us.
Mara Voss exhaled slowly,
We have to move tonight.
her voice low and urgent.
The sun goes down in 2 hours. When it does, the streetlights flicker on in patterns they use to signal their hunters.
Adrian Locke looked at Silas, who remained seated behind his fortress of dice.
You are giving us a map to their stronghold, and you are asking us to take it while it is undefended. There is no defense against what they have built.
Silas replied, his fingers hovering over the highest die in his tower.
The spire is not just a building, it is a siphon. They draw the years from the periphery and concentrate them at the center. If you take the ledger, you break the concentration, and if we fail, then you become part of the foundation.
Silas said.
Literally. The mortar of that building is ground bone and dried time. I have seen what happens to those who try to steal from them before. They do not die quickly. They become static.
Mara Voss stood up, her chair scraping against the dirt floor. Enough riddles. Where is the ledger? Silas reached into the folds of his tattered robe and pulled out a small black cylinder. It was made of glass, but it did not reflect the light from the lamp. Instead, it seemed to absorb it, swirling with a dark, viscous fluid inside.
This contains the original contracts, every name, every signature.
Every drop of time transferred against the will of the giver in the early years. It is their secret shame, their leverage. Without it, they are just rich men with long lives.
With it, they are monsters.
He held it out to Adrian. Adrian did not take it immediately. He looked at Mara Voss. She nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement of her chin. Adrian reached out and took the cylinder. It was cold, colder than ice. The darkness inside swirled faster as his fingers touched the glass, reacting to his presence like a living thing.
Why us? Why not give it to someone else? Someone who can fight back?
Because you are broke, and because you are hungry. You understand the value of nothing. The Billionaire Club understands the value of everything. They will never guess that the key to their undoing is in the hands of a man who cannot even afford a cup of coffee.
Mara Voss grabbed Adrian's arm. We need to go. Now. Adrian slipped the cylinder into his pocket. It weighed nothing, yet it felt heavier than any asset he had ever evaluated.
What happens if we release the information? The market collapses, panic, riots. The rich will flee or be consumed. You will inherit a broken world, Adrian Locke. But you will own the pieces.
Adrian looked at the old man. You are not coming with us? Silas laughed, a dry, rattling sound that echoed in the small tent. I am done playing. My time is up. I have spent my last year watching you both arrive. That is all I wanted, to see if anyone would come. He picked up a die and rolled it across the table. It spun on its edge, then settled. It was a 6.
Go. The night is young, and your time is running.
Mara Voss pulled Adrian toward the tent flap. They stepped out into the cold air of the edge. The wind howled through the collapsed overpass, carrying with it the smell of rain and decay. Above them, the city lights glowed like distant stars, indifferent to the struggle below.
Do you trust him?
Adrian asked as they moved quickly through the shadows of the tents.
I trust that he has nothing left to lose. And I trust that he is desperate enough to burn it all down.
Adrian touched the pocket where the cylinder lay. He could feel the pulse of his 5 years, a steady rhythm in his chest. It was no longer just survival. It was power. And power, he realized, was not about living forever. It was about controlling when everyone else died.
The spire is 3 miles north.
Checking her watch.
We have 40 minutes before the shift change. If we move fast, we can get inside through the service entrance. And then?
Adrian asked,
And then?
her eyes hardening as they emerged onto a dimly lit street.
We rewrite the rules of the world.
The basement apartment smelled of damp drywall and stale coffee, a scent that had become as permanent as Adrian Locke's silence. He sat on the edge of a folding chair, his spine straight, eyes fixed on the notebook spread across his knees. The pages were filled with frantic scrawls from the meeting in the underbelly, formulas for stability, warnings about exposure, the names of founders who had vanished into the shadows to avoid the same fate as their creations above the ink. Adrian saw nothing but text. The numbers were gone for now, hidden behind the curtain of concentration, but he felt their absence like a phantom limb. Mara Voss stood by the makeshift desk, her fingers flying across a laptop keyboard. A large printed map of the city covered the surface, pinned with red markers and connected by strings of yarn that looked absurdly amateurish against the severity of their situation. She was building a profile, layering data points over geographic locations, trying to find the pulse of the elite class that he needed to approach next.
You're staring at the same page for 10 minutes.
Not looking up from her screen.
Adrian, if you're going to analyze it, do it. If you're going to stare at it, leave me alone. I am calculating risk.
His voice was low, even, devoid of the agitation that usually accompanied sleepless nights. The formulas are correct, but they are incomplete. The founders didn't hide because they were weak. They hid because they were afraid of becoming obsolete. Mara paused, her hands hovering over the keys. She turned slightly in her chair, her expression tight.
Obsolete? You think we can replace them? Not replace?
He tapped a finger on a specific line of his notes.
Intercept. The Immortality Exchange isn't just a market, it's a leaky bucket. We are the ones holding the patch. But first, we need to know who owns the buckets.
He stood up, walking to the small window that overlooked the alleyway below. The city lights blurred through the grime, distant and indifferent. He remembered being broke, being ignored, being replaceable in a cubicle far above these streets. Now he held the power to decide who lived and who died by the second. It was not power as the movies depicted it. It was accounting.
What did you find in the underbelly?
Her tone shifting from impatient to curious.
The founder said there were rules. Rules we can break.
Only terms and conditions that have yet to be enforced. The poor sell their time every day for a wage that keeps them alive just long enough to work another day. I simply made the transaction honest. If they want more time, they pay. If they don't, they expire. It is basic economics. Mara laughed, a sharp, brittle sound.
You're terrifying, you know that? You speak about human life like it's inventory in a warehouse. It is inventory.
He turned back to her, his face impassive.
Until we list it publicly. And until we do, we need capital. We need influence. We need targets who understand the value of what they're losing.
He walked back to the desk and picked up a pen. The tip hovered over the map Mara had drawn.
Who is next? We have 3 potential leads in the Billionaire Club.
Pointing to a cluster of red pins near the financial district.
2 of them are looking for longevity treatments privately. 1 is trying to buy it illegally through offshore accounts. Take them all. But be careful. The wealthy do not give up control easily. They will test us. They will try to break us. We must remain calm.
Aren't you the one who's always calm?
Though she began moving markers on the map, preparing a route.
It's unnatural. Don't you feel anything? Fear? Excitement? I feel the weight of responsibility. Fear is for those who have something to lose that they cannot control. I control everything.
His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, watching Mara work. But the vibration continued, persistent and insistent. Finally, he pulled the device out. The screen lit up with a notification from the tracking app he had built for Sarah Thompson. She had been a minor character in episode 1, a brief encounter that had slipped through his fingers, but her digital footprint had grown increasingly erratic. He swiped open the message. Her location had updated 3 times in the last hour. Downtown, near the financial district.
Adrian?
Noticing the change in his posture,
What is it?
he looked at the screen, then at the map. The numbers in his mind began to flicker at the edges of his vision, not fully visible but felt a shifting tide of potential outcomes. Sarah Thompson was no longer a random variable. She was a node, and nodes had connections.
Sarah Thompson. She's downtown.
Mara frowned, squinting at his phone screen.
Who is that? You mentioned her before? A waitress?
A source, Adrian corrected.
And apparently she has been active. Recently seen with increased longevity markers after her brief encounter in episode 1. Someone is buying time for her. Why does that matter?
Leaning forward.
We're building a list of high-value targets. Why focus on a waitress? Because people who buy longevity for others are usually pawns.
His mind began to connect the dots the same way he had once connected risk assessments in insurance reports, or they are messengers. Mara Voss leaned over Adrian's shoulder, her breath hot against his ear as she peered at the glowing screen.
A source? You're tracking her like a hostile asset? Data doesn't care about titles.
Tapping the map on his phone to zoom in on Sarah's last known coordinates. It only cares about direction. She didn't just get longevity, she bought it. And she bought it from someone who knows the exchange isn't just underground anymore. Mara straightened up, crossing her arms. The red pins on the city map seemed to pulse under her gaze.
If she's connected to a larger buyer, we miss her. We lose the trail to the top. But if we go downtown now, with no backup and no cover, we're walking into a lion's den without teeth. We don't need teeth.
Slipping the phone back into his pocket, his movements were precise, economical.
We need leverage. Sarah is vulnerable. She has something they want to hide or something she needs to protect. Either way, she is at a critical inflection point. If we wait, the numbers shift. If we move, we dictate the terms. You're speaking in riddles again.
Grabbing her jacket from the back of the chair.
Can you just give me a reason that isn't market correction? Why Sarah? Why not one of the billionaire club targets? Because they are protected.
Picking up his coat, he buttoned it slowly, ensuring every layer was secure. The wealthy have walls. Sarah has none. She is porous, and porosity is where the leak begins. Mara hesitated, looking from the map to Adrian's face. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the unspoken understanding that Adrian had crossed a line he could not uncross. He was no longer just surviving, he was hunting.
If we do this,
We don't engage unless I say so. You stay calm. You calculate? I handle the chaos. I always calculate. Chaos is just data you haven't organized yet.
He moved toward the door, pausing only to look back at the notebook on the desk. The formulas from the hidden founders seemed to mock him with their incompleteness. He left it there. He didn't need notes, he had memory. He had the numbers. The rain in the city was not clean. It was a gray slurry of exhaust and urban decay, slicking the pavement in neon-tinged sheets. Adrian walked with Mara through the crowded streets of downtown, his collar turned up against the damp. The noise of the crowd was a dull roar, but to Adrian, it was a symphony of decaying assets. He saw the tension in their shoulders, the fatigue in their eyes, the subtle tremors of those who knew their time was limited by biology or debt. Sarah Thompson stood under the awning of a closed bank, shivering in a thin coat that offered no protection against the cold or the fear radiating off her. She clutched a bag close to her chest, her eyes darting toward every passing car and figure emerging from the shadows. Mara signaled Adrian to hold position near a newsstand, keeping them in the blind spot of the surveillance cameras mounted above the alley entrance.
she's waiting for someone.
Keeping her voice low enough to be lost in the traffic noise.
Look at her hands. She's tapping out a code or counting down.
Counting, Adrian corrected. He watched Sarah check her watch every 30 seconds.
She is measuring her remaining time. The buyer is late. That creates doubt. Doubt creates desperation. Desperation creates openings. And what happens if the buyer shows up?
Mara asked, her hand drifting toward the concealed weapon at her hip.
Then we observe. We learn who she is buying from. We learn why a waitress is moving high-volume time transfers. It contradicts the model. Inconsistencies are either errors or new data.
Sarah looked up, her eyes scanning the street with paranoid intensity. When her gaze swept past the newsstand, Adrian did not move. He allowed her to see him, just for a fraction of a second before he ducked his head behind a newspaper rack. It was a calculated risk, a signal.
I'm not waiting anymore.
Her voice trembling but firm. She pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number. I told you, I don't have the rest of the transfer. If I don't get the stability package in the next 10 minutes, I walk. And if I walk, everyone knows about your little clinic. Adrian's eyes narrowed. A clinic? The founder had spoken of hidden formulas, but not a physical location operating in plain sight. This escalated the threat level significantly. The Immortality Exchange was no longer just a concept or an underground negotiation, it was infrastructure. Mara caught Adrian's eye. She shook her head slightly, indicating she didn't recognize the name Sarah was using, or perhaps the nature of the deal. Adrian stepped out from behind the rack. He walked directly towards Sarah, his pace steady, unhurried. He did not run. Running implied pursuit. Walking implied ownership. Sarah saw him coming and took a step back, pressing herself against the wet brick wall. Her eyes widened in recognition.
Adrian, what are you doing here? Assessing a distressed asset.
Stopping 3 feet from her, he kept his hands visible, open at his sides.
You seem upset, Sarah. The market is volatile. I don't assessing a distressed asset.
Stopping 3 feet from her, he kept his hands visible, open at his sides. His voice was calm, devoid of threat, which made it all the more terrifying. You seem upset, Sarah. The market is volatile. I don't have time for your riddles, Sarah shrieked, her knuckles white as she gripped the burner phone against her chest. She backed up until her shoulder blades hit the rough brick of the bank's exterior wall.
Where are you from? Who sent you? Was it him? Him implies a singular authority.
Stepping out from behind the newsstand to flank Adrian's left side, she did not look at Sarah. She looked at the street corners, her posture relaxed but ready.
Adrian does not send people. He invites them. Your brother is alive.
He tilted his head slightly, observing the rapid fluctuations in her body language. The numbers above her head were bleeding red, a visual representation of her cortisol levels spiking.
I need the stability package.
Her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. She looked over her shoulder toward the mouth of the alley, then back at Adrian. He said if I bring him what he wants, he'll give me 10 years. 10 years, Adrian. That's more than I've seen in my entire life. If you stop this, I lose everything.
You already lost everything when you agreed to be a courier for the Immortality Exchange.
He took a single step forward, closing the distance by 1/2 meter. You are not a partner. You are a vector, a means of transport for stolen assets that do not belong to you. I didn't steal it, Sarah cried out, tears welling in her eyes. He gave it to me. He said it was a gift. He said I could have a future. Mara laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut through the rain. A gift? Did he also give you the tremors in your left hand? The way your breath hitches when you hold your breath too long? That isn't a gift, Sarah. That's interest accrued on a loan you can't pay back.
Shut up. Shut up. You don't know anything about him. You're just poor people pretending to be gods. And you are a rich person's dog.
He did not shout. He did not need to. His words landed with the weight of a closing vault door.
But dogs that bite their masters are put down. And you are about to make a decision, Sarah. One that will determine whether you remain a variable or become a constant. What do you want?
Sarah asked, her voice cracking.
Do you want the location? I don't know it. I swear on my life. He always meets me in person. In the dark. We don't want your ignorance.
He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small encrypted drive. It glinted under the street lamp's flickering light. We want your loyalty. For a price. Sarah stared at the drive as if it were a live grenade.
A price? I have no money. I have nothing. You have time, and you have potential. The Immortality Exchange is not just buying years, Sarah. It is building an economy, and we are looking for investors who understand risk. You have already invested your life in a failed venture. Let us help you diversify.
You're offering a transaction to a woman who is hyperventilating. It is the most rational offer available, Adrian corrected. He held the drive out between them.
Join us, and I will correct your balance. I will take the debt from your ledger and give you a fresh start. 10 years, clean and legal. No tremors. No hunters. And if I refuse?
Her gaze was fixed on the drive, her breathing shallow.
Then you go back to the man who uses you. And when he discards you for being too damaged to handle, he will come for me next. And I do not negotiate with people who threaten my operations.
Sarah looked up at Adrian, her eyes searching his face for a lie. She found none. That was what scared her most. He was offering her salvation with the same detached precision he used to calculate an insurance payout.
How do I know you won't just take it? You don't, but you know I'm right. The man you work for is weak. You can feel it in the time transfers. They are unstable. He is dying, Sarah. And he is trying to drag you into his grave.
Sarah's lip quivered. She looked at the burner phone in her hand, then at Adrian's outstretched arm. The rain plastered her hair to her forehead, running down her face like tears she refused to shed.
If I join you, do I get to keep my memories?
Sarah asked, her voice barely audible over the drumming rain. She did not reach for the drive. She stood paralyzed, caught between the predatory stillness of Adrian and the watchful shadow of Mara.
You get to keep everything you have earned.
He did not blink. The numbers above her head had stabilized into a dull, fearful gray. The rest is just noise. We prune the noise. Mara shifted her weight, her boots squeaking faintly on the wet pavement. Sarah, look at me. The man you are meeting tonight? He does not care if you live. He cares that you move the product. You are inventory. Do you want to be inventory, or do you want to be a shareholder? Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. A single tear tracked through the grime on her cheek.
If I say no, what happens to him? He dies, inevitably. The question is whether he takes your longevity with him, or whether we intercept it before the transfer completes. It is a matter of logistics, not mercy.
Sarah opened her eyes. They were red-rimmed, exhausted, but the panic had receded, replaced by a cold, hard calculation. She looked at the burner phone in her hand as if it were a dead weight.
Where do I meet you? Not here. If you run, we know where you are. If you play us, we will know. Do not test the infrastructure.
Go to the pier, Adrian instructed. He lowered his hand slightly, keeping the drive within her line of sight, but not forcing it into hers yet. Warehouse 4, midnight. Come alone. Leave the phone in the storm drain at the corner of 4th and Main. If you bring a tracker, we will let him catch you. If you bring a weapon, I will take your time anyway, but I will charge you a premium for the inconvenience. Sarah swallowed hard. Her Adam's apple bobbed visibly.
And my brother? He is safe. For now, consider this our down payment on future cooperation. You are in debt to us, Sarah. That is a heavy burden. Are you sure you want to take it?
I have nothing left to lose, she whispered. You have your life, Mara corrected. That is the only thing that matters. Sarah nodded once, a jerky, brittle motion. She stepped forward and snatched the encrypted drive from Adrian's fingers. Her hand trembled as she closed her fist around it. The contact lasted less than a second, but for Adrian, it felt like signing a contract in blood.
Midnight.
He adjusted his cufflinks, though they were plain steel.
Do not be late. Time waits for no one, Sarah, even those who sell it.
Sarah turned and ran. She knew better than to break eye contact with a predator twice in one night. Adrian watched her go. The numbers above her head had vanished, replaced by the standard gray haze of an unverified asset.
She is unstable.
She pulled out a small notebook and scribbled something down.
Her vitals were spiking even from here. Can we trust her? We do not trust people, Mara.
He turned back to face the street. The rain had slowed to a drizzle.
We trust incentives. She wants survival, we offer it. It is a fair trade. And if she doubles-cross us, then we correct the market.
His expression remained placid, his eyes reflecting the neon glow of the city. But she will not. Desperation makes for loyal employees. Fear is a better motivator than gold. Mara closed her notebook with a snap.
So what now? We wait? We observe.
He began to walk back toward their car, his hands clasped behind his back.
We watch to see who meets her at the pier. The man she is working for is hiding in plain sight. Now that we know he has a courier, we know he has a network. And if there is a network, there are ledgers. Not if they are digital and decentralized.
He paused at the edge of the sidewalk, looking back at the alley where Sarah had vanished. But I suspect this man is traditional. Arrogant men always are. They believe their secrets are safe because no one is rich enough to care. Adrian smiled, a small, thin curve of his lips. It did not reach his eyes. Mara fell into step beside him, her stride matching his. You're enjoying this too much. I am efficient, Adrian corrected. He opened the car door and slid into the passenger seat. The interior smelled of old leather and stale coffee. Enjoyment is irrelevant. Profit is everything. As Mara started the engine, Adrian pulled out a new notebook. He was building a profile not just on Sarah, but on the organization she served. The Immortality Exchange was no longer a myth. It was a corporation. And corporations could be hostilely acquired.
Drive. We.
The rain on the window pane blurred the city lights into streaks of neon blood and acid green, but Adrian's attention was fixed on the single number hovering over Sarah Thompson's head. It was bright, pulsing with a terrifying urgency, yet it carried the faint, jagged edges of someone who had recently stolen time they did not earn. He watched the digits shift, not by their natural decay, but in sharp, jerky increments, as if her lifespan were being manipulated by an invisible hand. Adrian sat in the dimly lit corner of the safe house, a cheap motel that smelled of mildew and regret, his hands resting calmly on the table. Across from him, Mara paced like a caged animal, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration.
You see it too.
His voice level, devoid of the panic that gripped Sarah just moments ago in the alleyway below. Mara stopped pacing and pointed at the screen where the security feed showed Sarah running from the black sedan. It's not just there, Adrian. It's everywhere. Look at the traffic cam above her car. The driver, the pedestrian waiting for the light. They all have them. Adrian nodded slowly. He had seen this since that night in the alley, since he lost everything and gained everything simultaneously. To anyone else it was madness. To Adrian, it was data, and data could be managed.
We need to talk to her.
Her voice tight, he tapped the glass of the monitor where Sarah had frozen, cornered, and trembling. The confrontation happened 10 minutes ago. Do you remember what I asked her? Mara blinked, the adrenaline fading into a cold realization. You gave her a choice. I did. Adrian stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street where police sirens were beginning to wail. As if summoned by his words, the number above Sarah's head on the screen spiked red. A new figure stepped out from the shadows of the adjacent alleyway in the video feed. Adrian squinted. The figure wore a long coat and carried himself with the stiff, unnatural posture of someone trying to hide their age through effort rather than grace. But it was the number that mattered. It was static, frozen, someone who wants her time, Adrian observed, and they aren't asking. Mara moved to stand beside him, peering at the screen. Can you stop them? Adrian shook his head. Not yet, but he had something else. He had the understanding of what was happening. The world was about to change, and he was the only one holding the ledger.
Which means we're exposed.
Mara whispered,
No.
turning away from the window. His eyes were calm, calculating.
It means we're necessary. They need us to understand the rules. We just have to make sure they can't break them until we've set our price.
As he put it on, he looked at Mara. Get the bags. We're going to the Billionaire Club. Mara froze. The what? If we're going to survive this, we need to meet the market makers, and I know exactly how to get in. The rain had intensified by the time they reached the entrance of the Billionaire Club, a towering spire of glass and steel that pierced the clouds above the city's wealthiest district. Adrian stepped out of the car, holding an umbrella over his head as he watched Mara struggle with 2 heavy duffel bags. He didn't help her. There was no need for charity when there was business to be done. The bouncer at the door was a mountain of muscle, dressed in a suit that cost more than Adrian had earned in his entire life. As an insurance analyst, he blocked the entrance with a sneer, eyeing their disheveled appearance. Private event, the bouncer grunted, not even bothering to ask who they were. Turn around. Adrian stepped forward, ignoring the man's posture entirely. He looked up at the bouncer, focusing on the number above his head. It was high, comfortably so, but it had a crack in it, a leak. Someone was buying time from this man's future, slowly draining him.
Tell your employer,
His voice polite but firm,
that Adrian Locke is here to discuss the liquidity of the market.
a harsh, barking sound.
I don't care if you're the Pope. Get lost.
Adrian didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metallic card he had fabricated from the data they had stolen. It wasn't money. It was something else entirely. a promise of time.
Or,
Holding up the card,
you can tell him that I have the deed to his remaining 10 years.
the bouncer's smile faltered. He looked at the card, then back at Adrian, confusion warring with his training.
What is this? Is ridiculous.
Stepping closer to block Adrian's path further, his hand drifting toward his belt.
I'm calling security. You can try.
He didn't move, keeping his posture relaxed, though his eyes remained locked on the shimmering digits above the man's head. The number was dropping fast now, a jagged red line plummeting, as if the bouncer were bleeding time. But if you call anyone who hasn't paid their dues to the exchange, they won't hear you scream. They'll just hear the silence of a life cut short. The bouncer hesitated, his brow furrowing as he looked at the metallic card in Adrian's hand. It hummed with a low, vibrating frequency that seemed to resonate in the air between them.
What is that thing? It's a ledger entry, and you're overdrawn. Do you want to know who holds the deed to your next decade? Or do you want to find out when your heart stops?
Mara stepped up beside Adrian, her presence sharp and alert. Let him in, Gary. He smells like old money and new fear. That's the only currency we accept here. The bouncer flinched at his name. Now move aside. The meeting is already late. Gary swallowed hard, his hand trembling as it dropped from his belt. He stepped back, opening the heavy glass doors with a shaky grip.
Don't cause trouble. We're here to make the market.
Walking past him into the lobby.
Trouble is just another word for opportunity.
The interior of the Billionaire Club was a study in excess. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings lost in shadow, casting light on marble floors polished to a mirror finish. Waiters moved silently between tables, serving drinks that glowed with faint, unnatural luminescence. But it wasn't the opulence that drew Adrian's eye. It was the numbers. Every single person in the room had a floating clock above their head, most of them static, frozen in place like trophies on a shelf. They weren't aging. Not here.
Stay close.
Her voice low.
These people don't like being watched. They're being watched regardless.
He scanned the room, his mind racing through calculations. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and expensive perfume. Somewhere in the center of the room, a man sat at a high table, surrounded by 3 others who were visibly younger than their faces suggested. Their numbers were locked tight, gleaming white against the dark backdrop of the club's shadows. Adrian approached the table, his steps deliberate. The moment he entered their periphery, the conversation at the table died instantly. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, cold and analytical. The central figure was a woman with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her number was bright gold, unchanging, radiant. She looked Adrian up and down with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You're late," she said, her voice smooth as silk.
And you're wearing the clothes of someone who has nothing. I have everything I need.
Stopping at the edge of the table, he placed the metallic card on the polished wood. It slid forward, coming to rest directly in front of her. "And I'm here because the liquidity is drying up. You felt it, haven't you? The gaps in your own ledger." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't touch the card.
Who are you?
"Adrian Locke," he said.
Founder of the Immortality Exchange. And I'm here to offer you a solution to your growing problem.
One of the men at the table laughed, a harsh, brittle sound.
You're broke. You're hunted. You have no power here. Why should we listen to you? Because,
Turning his gaze to the man's number, it was cracked, fissures running through the digits like spiderwebs. Your time is leaking. Someone inside your circle is siphoning it from you, slowly, quietly. You don't even know how much you've lost until now. The man's face went pale. He looked at his companion, then back at Adrian.
what do you want? I want a seat at the table, and I want to show you how to stop the leak.
The silver-haired woman finally reached out, her fingers brushing the card. A spark of light jumped from the metal to her skin. She gasped, pulling her hand back as if burned.
What is this? A demonstration, the Chrono Ledger. It allows me to see, buy, sell, store, trade, gift, freeze, accelerate, and invest lifespan.
The silence in the table was absolute. The other patrons nearby had stopped their conversations, drawn by the tension radiating from the group. "You're bluffing," the man whispered. "No one can control time like that." "I'm not controlling it," Adrian corrected. "I'm accounting for it, and right now your account is in deficit." The woman leaned forward, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and greed.
Prove it. Look at his hand.
Pointing to the man who had laughed, the man's hand was trembling, his fingers curling involuntarily. As everyone watched, the skin on his knuckles began to wrinkle rapidly, aging decades in seconds. He cried out, clutching his wrist. His time is being accelerated. By whom? By you. You've been borrowing from him without realizing it. The man screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore through the ambient jazz of the club. He clawed at his hands, his skin turning papery and spotted with age in real time. The gold-haired woman recoiled, her composure shattering into sheer terror. "Stop it," she shrieked, standing up so fast her chair toppled over. "Make it stop." Adrian didn't move. He watched the digits above the man's head plummet, turning from a dull gray to a critical red. "I cannot reverse an acceleration once started unless you authorize the trade. He is your friend," the woman hissed, looking at Adrian with wide, panicked eyes.
Fix him. I have no obligation to anyone here except myself.
He tilted his head toward the gasping man.
Unless you offer a fair exchange for the stability of his remaining years.
The other men at the table were frozen, their own numbers flickering uncertainly in the air around them. One of them, a young-looking man with sharp features, leaned forward.
What are you? I am a creditor, and right now this city is bankrupting itself on false promises.
The silver-haired woman looked from her friend to Adrian. "You say you can freeze lifespan?"
I can invest it. I can store it in a secure vault. I can trade it on an open market.
He tapped the metallic card on the table.
The chrono ledger is not a trick. It is the truth you have been ignoring.
"Why should we trust you? You are an outsider. A nobody."
Because I am the only one who can see the cracks in your foundation.
He looked directly at the aging man, who was now wheezing heavily, his hair turning white. Before their eyes, the room held its breath. The waiters had stopped moving. "What is the cost?" the silver-haired woman asked, her voice barely audible.
There is no monetary cost, only loyalty. And access. Access to what? To the truth. The exchange exists because the rich are terrified of death. But you do not need to fear death. You need to fear irrelevance. I can make you irrelevant gods, or I can make you immortal kings. The choice is yours.
Mara stepped into Adrian's peripheral vision, her eyes narrowed. She knew he was gambling everything on this single moment. If they failed here, there would be no second chance.
The market is open.
Addressing the entire table.
Who wants to buy time?
A murmur ran through the crowd nearby. The silver-haired woman stared at Adrian for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the metallic card from the table. The moment her fingers touched it, a pulse of light erupted from the card, wrapping around her hand like liquid gold.
What is happening? You are now connected to the ledger, your lifespan is secure, and you have a debt to me.
The man on the floor groaned, his aging slowing, stopping entirely. The red digits above his head stabilized at 40 years. He looked up, dazed and confused, clutching his chest.
How? Because I own your time now, and I will lend it to you, at interest.
The silver-haired woman looked at her hand, then at Adrian. Fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating hunger.
How much is the interest? The truth about who controls the exchange, and who built it.
Mara stepped forward, placing a hand on Adrian's arm, a silent warning. He didn't pull away.
You have my attention.
Standing straighter.
And my respect. Good. Then let us discuss the acquisition of the remaining assets.
The air crackled with anticipation. Adrian looked out over the sea of numbers, seeing not just lifespans but opportunities. The game had changed. He was no longer a player, he was the house.
This is ridiculous.
Though her eyes were bright with excitement.
You just sold us to the devil. I bought the devil, and now he owes me.
The silver-haired woman smiled, a slow, predatory curve of her lips. "Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Locke." Adrian nodded politely. "Thank you. Now, shall we proceed to the boardroom? The market is waiting." Adrian turned away from the table, leaving the silver-haired woman to process her new reality. The air in the club was thick with the scent of ozone and fear. He walked toward the exit, Mara falling into step beside him. Her footsteps were sharp against the polished floor, a rhythm of agitation that matched her breathing. "Stop," she said, grabbing his arm as they reached the heavy oak doors.
You can't just walk out. They're going to come for us. I am walking out because I have nothing left to prove here.
He pulled his arm free gently.
The seed is planted. The roots will grow in the dark.
Roots? Mara's voice rose, pitching higher than she intended. She glanced around, noticing the eyes following them from the shadows of the booths.
You didn't plant a seed, Adrian. You started a fire. And now everyone wants to put it out before it burns their houses down. Let them try.
He pushed the doors open. The night air hit them like a physical blow, cold and damp. This isn't how it works, Mara insisted, falling into step again as they crossed the wet pavement.
You don't just hand out golden cards to strangers and expect loyalty. You have leverage. Where is the leverage? The leverage is that I hold their time.
He looked up at the sky, where the smog diffused the city lights into a sickly yellow haze. Above the passers-by, their numbers floated like ghostly halos. Some were bright green, others dull gray. A few were cracked, and they know it. Mara stopped walking. She turned to face him, her coat flapping in the wind.
They will remember the acceleration.
He didn't look at her. He kept walking, his pace steady.
They felt their time slip away while I watched. They felt the helplessness of a god who can do nothing but watch his own decay. That memory is stronger than gratitude. It is stronger than greed.
And what about me?
Her voice dropped, losing its edge, becoming quiet and raw.
Where do I fit in this ledger? What is my balance?
Adrian stopped. He turned to look at her. For the first time, he looked directly into her eyes, not past them.
You are the only one who sees the numbers clearly without needing a card.
That's not an answer.
Mara said.
That's a riddle. It is a fact.
He adjusted his collar against the chill.
Sarah Thompson has been spotted downtown. Her transaction history suggests she knows more about the exchange than she lets on.
Mara sighed, rubbing her temples.
Of course she does. She always did know too much. What do you want me to do? Intercept her? I want you to find out who is pulling her strings, because if Sarah is connected to a larger conspiracy, then we are not just dealing with wealthy eccentrics. We are dealing with architects. Architects of what?
Mara asked.
Of death itself.
He started walking again, faster this time.
And we need to know their blueprints before they draw the final line.
Mara ran to catch up.
Adrian, you can't just say things like that and walk away. What does that even mean? Who are these architects? Find Sarah.
He didn't slow down.
And bring me her ledger. All of it. And if she refuses?
Mara called after him.
Then she becomes part of the infrastructure.
His voice remained calm, detached.
But I doubt she will refuse. She knows what I can do, and she is afraid. Afraid?
Mara echoed.
Of you? Of what comes next?
He pulled his coat tighter around himself. The street lights flickered above them, casting long, distorted shadows on the wet asphalt. Run along, Mara. We have a lot of ground to cover before morning. Mara stood there for a moment, watching him walk away into the mist. She wanted to argue, to demand more clarity, but she knew better. Adrian Locke did not deal in clarity, he dealt in certainty. She turned and headed in the opposite direction, her mind racing. The numbers above the people on the street seemed to pulse with a new urgency. Green digits glowed with hope. Red digits throbbed with despair. It was all so visible, so tangible. She had spent years pretending the world was fair. Now she knew it was just a balance sheet, and Adrian Locke was the only one who held the pen. The rain in London did not wash things clean. It merely pressed the grime deeper into the cobblestones, turning the city's underbelly into a slick, reflective mirror of its own decay. Adrian Locke stood on the balcony of a penthouse that cost more than his grandfather would earn in 10 lifetimes, looking down at the speckled lights of the street below. He was no longer broke. He was no longer ignored. He was the architect of the impossible, standing on the precipice of godhood with nothing but a phone and a ledger of secrets in his pocket. Behind him, the double doors to the terrace slid open with a hushed hiss. Mara stepped out, her silhouette sharp against the warm glow of the interior lighting. She held 2 glasses of amber liquid, the ice clinking softly as she approached. She did not ask if he was ready. She already knew the answer.
You're quiet.
Handing him one of the glasses. Her voice was steady, devoid of the tremor that usually accompanied fear or excitement. That's worse than your usual silence. Adrian took the glass but did not drink. He watched his own reflection in the darkened window pane, superimposed over the city he had just conquered.
Quiet is efficient. Noise gives away position. Noise suggests uncertainty. We're not uncertain. We're exposed. The black card members are watching. They don't like unknown variables in their equations.
Mara leaned against the railing, her eyes scanning the horizon where the financial district's spires pierced the cloud cover like jagged teeth.
Sarah Thompson was spotted near the exchange hub an hour ago. She's looking for answers, or a buyer. Let her look.
His tone flat, practical.
Panic is a commodity I no longer need to sell. Let them think they are hunting. It keeps them moving. Movement creates mistakes.
And when do we strike?
She took a sip of her drink, her gaze fixed on the distant lights of the Billionaire Club, the fortress where the 12 lived in perpetual twilight. The deal is set. The contracts are signed. But if one of them refuses, if they decide to burn the table instead of playing the hand, Adrian finally turned from the window to face her. His expression was unreadable, calm in a way that felt colder than the rain. They cannot refuse. Not anymore. The clause is absolute. It is woven into the very definition of their immortality. When Adrian calls, they must answer. It is not a request, Mara. It is a fundamental law of their new existence. Mara set her glass down on the stone railing with a deliberate clink. And the world? The rich have discovered that immortality is real. The markets are volatile. Governments are scrambling to contain the narrative. Do you think they'll wait for us to dictate the terms? They will panic, Adrian corrected. Panic is predictable. When people realize their money cannot buy time, and their power cannot stop decay, they do not fight back effectively. They bargain. And I am the only one holding the currency. Adrian pulled his phone from his pocket. It was a simple device, unassuming, black and sleek, but it contained the leverage that would topple empires. He scrolled through a contact list named simply the 12. Each name was a monarch, a general, a media mogul, a banker. They controlled nations, banks, wars, media, and global systems. They were gods in suits draped in wealth and influence, but every black card member had a hidden contract clause. When Adrian called, they must answer.
Look at them.
Tapping the screen.
They think they are above us. They think they are safe behind their walls, their algorithms, their armies. But time is the one thing they cannot hoard forever. I have broken the dam. Now, we see what floods in.
Mara watched him, her eyes narrowing slightly.
You're enjoying this too much. It's almost unprofessional. I am professional. I am precise. Enjoyment is irrelevant. Control is everything. And tonight, the control shifts entirely to me. The convergence begins at dawn. Are you prepared for what comes after?
I was born prepared.
She picked up her glass again and drained it in one smooth motion. Then let's make the first call. Adrian nodded once. He tapped the first name on the list, a name that controlled half the Western banking sector. The phone began to ring. Somewhere across the city, in a penthouse shielded by steel and secrets, a man who had cheated death for centuries would be forced to pick up. The line clicked open. Adrian Locke, a voice said. It was smooth, confident, used to command.
I assume this is about the interest rates on your previous debts. I must inform you that—
You are late, Adrian interrupted. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. You have 3 seconds to acknowledge your obligation. 1. There was a silence on the other end, a hesitation so brief it would have been invisible to anyone else, but Adrian saw it.
2. What is this?
Sharper now.
Who are you two?
3. The breathing changed. The hidden contract clause activated, a psychic tether forged in blood and time, pulling the man down from his throne into Adrian's orbit. I hear you, the voice stammered, fear leaking through the veneer of power.
What do you want? Everything.
And he,
Start with London.
watching the man on the screen wince as the clause tightened its grip. Tell him about the pension funds. Tell him I know where he buried the bodies that aren't technically dead yet. The voice on the other end faltered.
You don't have that information. The records were shredded. They exist in the time between heartbeats, and you have 4 seconds before your heart stops beating naturally again. 2. I acknowledge the debt. What do you need? Silence.
He hung up without waiting for a response. The line went dead with a sharp click. Mara leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees.
That was terrifyingly efficient. It is necessary.
He tapped the second name on the list. The phone rang once before being answered.
To what do I owe the pleasure? Or should I say, the displeasure? Your stock price is dropping. You're leaking information about the exchange to the press. You think you can control the narrative.
I am shaping history, she countered. You give me noise, Adrian corrected, and I have no use for noise. You have 10 seconds to liquidate your stake in 3 major defense contractors and transfer the funds to an account under my control. 1? She asked, her tone sharpening. I have lawyers who... I have time, Adrian interrupted, and you are running out of it. 9. You're bluffing. 8. 7. 6. Wait.
Stop. What is this? How do you know about the transfer protocols? I know everything. 5, 4, 3. Do you accept the terms or do you wish to test the clause? I accept. I accept. Good.
He ended the call and looked at Mara.
The media is neutralized. They will report nothing until I say otherwise.
And the bankers?
Picking up her glass again. The ice had melted, diluting the whiskey into a watery amber.
Do we have them too? We have the one who holds the keys to the global ledger.
He tapped the third name. This was harder. Julian Vane was not just a banker, he was a predator who had hunted men like Adrian for decades. Vane answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with alcohol and arrogance. I heard you called. Bold of you to reach out after I've spent years trying to bury your father's name.
I'm not here to talk about your past sins, Julian. I'm here to talk about your future. You have 5 seconds to open your offshore accounts in the Caymans and route them through a series of shell companies I'll detail in the next 10 minutes.
Offshore?
I've moved that money so many times it's dizzying. You can't touch it. It's gone. It's not gone. It's just waiting for permission to exist. And I am the only one who can grant or revoke that permission. 4, 3.
You're insane, Vane spat. You think you can scare me? I'm immortal, Locke. You can't kill me. No, Adrian agreed. But I can make your life so unbearable that death will look like mercy. 2, 1. There was a sudden intake of breath on the other end, a gasp of pure, unadulterated terror. The clause wasn't just a legal binding, it was a physical pain, a spike of agony that only Adrian could control. Wait, Vane wheezed.
Wait. I can't. Breathe. Open the accounts, Julian.
His voice devoid of sympathy.
Or close your eyes forever. I'm doing it.
Vane cried out. I'm initiating the transfer. Please, stop. Vane collapsed onto his desk, heaving for air, his face pale and slick with sweat. Done. Vane choked out.
It's done. The money is yours. Just, please. For now.
He ended the call.
You played that one close to the edge. I never play with edges.
He stood up and walked to the bar, pouring himself a fresh drink.
I control them. That is all.
And the rest?
The other 9? They are watching. They know what happened to Julian. They know what happened to the first 2. Let them watch.
He took a sip of the whiskey, letting the burn settle in his chest. Fear is a powerful motivator, and now they know I am not asking. I am demanding. He turned back to the list on his phone. 9 names remained. Titans of industry, political leaders, shadow brokers.
3 more to go.
Leaning against the wall with her arms crossed.
The tech oligarchs. They are the hardest nuts to crack because they don't believe in death. They think code is eternal.
Adrian turned to face her, his expression flat. He tapped the 4th name. Elena Rostova, the architect of the global surveillance grid. Her voice was crisp, digital, devoid of the warmth of human breath. Mr. Locke, she said.
Your intrusion into my network has been noted. I have traced your signal. You are in a safe house in Sector 4. I am wherever time allows. You know why I called. The clause is active, Elena. Do not test the latency of my patience.
You think you control me? She laughed, a cold, metallic sound.
I own the eyes that watch this city. If I shut down your grid, you are blind. You are nothing. I do not need eyes. I have sight. And I see your servers in Zurich. I see your backup drives in Reykjavik. I see the time logs of every transaction you have ever made to hide from the tax authorities. 10 seconds.
Blackmail is so crude, she sneered. I am auditing. 9. 8. Your servers are heating up, Elena. I suggest you cool them down by transferring your encryption keys to me. 7. You can't. 6. 5. 4. Stop, she shouted. The confidence vanished. What do you want? The keys, and the list of every Black Card member you have spied on. 2. 1. Then, a file transferred across the line. Adrian felt the weight of it settle into his phone.
Good?
He ended the call. Mara stepped forward, looking at the phone with wide eyes. You made her give up her spy network without a fight. She fought, Adrian corrected. She just realized she was fighting gravity. You cannot bargain with it. He dialed the 5th number. Marcus Thorne, the arms dealer. His voice was rough, filled with static and the distant sound of gunfire. Locke, Thorne growled.
My men say you are coming for me. Let them try. Your men are already paid to leave. I have bought their silence with your own accounts. 5 seconds to surrender your stockpiles in Syria and Yemen. 1.
You are bluffing. I have armies. You have mercenaries who now report to me. 4. 3. Thorne swore loudly, the sound of a pistol being racked echoing in the background.
This is war, Locke. This is business. 2. 1.
The line went dead. A moment later, Marcus Thorne called back, his voice trembling with rage and fear.
They are gone.
I don't know who they are. Just stop. I transfer the assets, everything. Mara let out a low whistle.
You are frighteningly good at this. I am inevitable.
He dialed the 6th number. Sarah Thompson. Her connection was different, newer, less entrenched but potent. She answered immediately. Adrian, she said, her voice calm, almost amused.
I knew you would call. You have been tracking me since Paris. I know about your deal with the original founders, Sarah. It is a leak in the hull of this ship, and I am plugging it. You are accelerating the sinking. Do you think you can control them? The 12. You are one man. They are gods. I am the man who collects their debts, and your debt is due. Transfer your longevity reserves to the exchange. Now, I will take everything else first, your reputation, your freedom, your safety. The clause does not just threaten pain, Sarah, it threatens relevance. Without the exchange, you are obsolete. 3 seconds.
Adrian saw her mind working, weighing the cost of defiance against the certainty of loss. Fine, she snapped.
But know this, by taking their money, you make yourself their enemy. Not just an obstacle, an existential threat. The only threat they face is time, and I am its master. 2, 1.
She transferred the funds. The screen flashed green. Mara looked at the list. Only 6 names remained on the digital roster, but the real prize was yet to come.
Are you done with the puppets? I am just warming up.
He swiped the screen, revealing the final tier, the black card members, the 12 who sat above the laws of men and time.
Only 12 exist.
His voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to vibrate in the very air of the room. They control nations, banks, wars, media, and global systems. But every black card member has a hidden contract clause. When Adrian calls, they must answer. Mara stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. To touch one was suicide. To command them was impossible. Yet Adrian's fingers hovered over the interface, steady as stone.
You can't actually call them.
Her voice low and tight.
These aren't people, Adrian. They are institutions. You cannot audit the sky. Watch me.
He tapped the first name. Arthur Pendleton.
If you call him and he ignores it,
Mara asked.
he won't. The clause is absolute. It is the foundation upon which their immortality rests. Without it, they are just old men waiting for rot. With it, they are prisoners of eternity, and I hold the keys to the cage.
He dialed. The ringtone was deafening in the quiet room, a synthetic chime that sounded like a heartbeat slowing down. Pendleton answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was smooth, aged by decades of power and privilege, but laced with an undercurrent of tension he tried to hide.
Locke, I trust. This is not a social call. It is a business call, and the terms are simple. I need your loyalty, not your money, your voice, your vote, your influence.
Loyalty is a currency I do not trade, Pendleton said, his tone icy.
You have made yourself enemies, boy. Dangerous ones. Do you think you can stand against the consortium? I don't need to stand against you. I just need you to listen, and then obey. The clause is active, Arthur. I can feel it humming in your blood. Are you in pain yet?
There was a silence on the line, a long, heavy pause where Pendleton's arrogance warred with his survival instinct. I am fine, Pendleton lied, but his breathing hitched, just for a second.
You are sweating, Adrian noted. I can hear it. The clause doesn't just bind you, it exposes you. Every lie you tell hurts more now. Every attempt to resist feels like tearing your own skin off. Why fight what is inevitable? This is insanity, Pendleton snapped, but there was no force behind it.
Only fear. pure, unadulterated fear. It is clarity, Adrian corrected. You have had 60 years of running from death. I am offering you a different kind of immortality, one where you choose your master rather than being enslaved by time itself. Join me, Arthur, or watch your empire crumble while you stand frozen in terror. Pendleton exhaled sharply.
What do you want specifically? Access to the inner circle, introductions to the other 11, and unconditional compliance when I ask. In exchange, I will ensure your longevity remains secure. No one else can threaten you as long as you are with me.
And if I refuse? Pendleton asked. His voice was barely a whisper now. The threat hung in the air, invisible but suffocating.
Then I let the clause do its work, and I move to the next name. But know this, when you are alone, screaming in the dark while your body betrays you, you will wonder why you didn't just say yes.
Pendleton was silent for a full 10 seconds. The weight of eternity pressed down on the line. Finally he spoke, his voice stripped of all arrogance, reduced to the bare necessity of survival.
I am listening.
Pendleton said.
Tell me what to do. Good.
He ended the call without another word. Mara stared at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dread.
He gave up. Just like that. He had no choice.
He tapped the second name, Eleanor Vance. The media mogul who shaped public opinion across continents. The first domino has fallen. Now we watch the rest fall. He dialed again. This time he did not waste time with threats. He simply stated the reality of their situation. When you hold the sword that can kill godhood, mercy is irrelevant. Only utility remains. Vance answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, accustomed to commanding boards of directors and dictating news cycles.
Locke, I have been waiting for this call. I know, you have been monitoring my movements, trying to predict where I will strike next, but you can't predict inevitability.
Predicting is for amateurs.
I control the narrative. I can turn you into a monster in an hour. A warning to anyone who dares challenge the status quo. You can try, but remember the clause. Every word you speak against me will burn your throat. Every attempt to smear my name will cost you breath. You want to destroy me? Go ahead. But know that every lie you tell will shorten the remaining seconds of your comfortable life.
Vance laughed, but it was a brittle sound. You think you can silence the world?
I think I can make you choose between your ego and your existence. Which is more important to you, Eleanor?
Being right or being alive? Truly alive, not just. The fluorescent lights of the actuarial department hummed with a frequency that seemed to drill directly into Adrian Locke's temples. He sat before his monitor, the glow illuminating the dark circles under his eyes and the pale exhaustion etched into the lines of his face. Around him, the office was a cavern of glass and steel, populated by colleagues who moved with the languid confidence of people who knew their worth was immutable. Adrian's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking at the end of a spreadsheet cell that contained the cold, calculated probability of a stranger's death. Adrian. The voice came from behind him, sharp and devoid of warmth. Adrian did not turn immediately. He finished entering the data point, saved the file, and slowly swiveled his chair. Standing there was Marcus Thorne, his senior supervisor, holding a manila folder as if it were contaminated waste.
You're looking tired, Locke.
Marcus said.
Is everything all right at home? My mother is sick.
His voice was steady, but the weight of the words hung heavy in the sterile air. The experimental treatments are expensive. Marcus sighed, a long theatrical exhalation that spoke of inconvenience rather than empathy. He tapped the folder against his palm.
We need to talk about your recent performance metrics. The projections on the Westgate policy? They were off by 4%. I adjusted for the pre-existing conditions. The data was clear. The data is what we decide it is.
Marcus corrected him, stepping closer. He leaned over the desk, his cologne overpowering the smell of stale coffee and ozone.
Management has reviewed your work. We find your methodology overly cautious, and frankly, obsolete. You're calculating risk where we see opportunity. Opportunity for whom? For the company. For those who can afford to write the checks that keep this building standing.
Marcus dropped the folder onto Adrian's keyboard. It landed with a dull thud. I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately. Your access cards are deactivated as we speak. Please collect your personal effects and leave. Security will escort you out if necessary. Adrian stared at him. The numbers above Marcus's head were visible now, though Adrian was still trying to make sense of the phenomenon that had begun last night. A glowing, golden 42 hovered inches above Marcus's receding hairline. It pulsed with a slow, confident rhythm.
You're stealing my models. I'm saving you from your own limitations.
Marcus smiled, a thin stretching of lips that didn't reach his eyes. Consider it a severance package. Though given your current liquidity, I doubt it matters. He turned on his heel and walked away, his shoes clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Adrian sat frozen for a moment, the silence of the office pressing in on him. Then he stood up, picked up his single bag, and walked out. He did not look back at the row of desks where his colleagues pretended not to see him go. The rain was relentless when he stepped out of the building, a cold deluge that soaked through his thin jacket instantly. He walked for miles, aimless, the city blurring around him in shades of gray and neon. He passed a pharmacy window displaying advertisements for expensive life extension therapies he would never afford. He passed a high-rise where the penthouse suites glowed with warm light, oblivious to the storm below. His phone buzzed. It was his girlfriend, Elena. The message was short, pragmatic, and final. He stared at the screen until it went black in his hand. He looked up at the hospital across the street, its windows dark except for one floor, his mother's room. The light was still on. She was waiting for money he did not have. He wandered into the alleyways behind the financial district, seeking shelter from the wind. The streets here were narrower, darker, smelling of wet trash and diesel. He leaned against a brick wall, sliding down until he hit the pavement, pulling his knees to his chest. The numbness was spreading from his fingers up his arms. Rough night. The voice was raspy, dry like dead leaves skittering across concrete. Adrian looked up. Sitting in the shadows of a doorway was a man huddled beneath layers of tattered blankets. His face was gaunt, his skin gray and sallow, but it was what floated above him that stopped Adrian's breath. A one glowed faintly above the homeless man's head. It flickered, unstable, dying.
Who are you?
His voice hoarse.
A man with no time.
He coughed, a wet, rattling sound that shook his frail frame. You look like you have plenty, though. Or you did. Adrian gripped his own knees. The numbers, they were real. Everyone had them. The insurance analyst in him tried to calculate the statistical probability of such an impossibility, but his brain refused to engage. This was not a hallucination. It was a fact.
What do you want? Comfort, warmth, food that doesn't taste like dirt, and silence.
He looked at Adrian with eyes that were surprisingly clear amidst the decay. I know what you are, Adrian Locke. You count lives for money. I am selling mine to you for a price. Adrian stared. Adrian stared at the flickering one hovering above the ragged head.
I am not buying anything.
His voice felt foreign in his throat, rough from disuse and despair. I have nothing to give. You have hope, the man corrected him. He shifted slightly, wincing as a wave of pain seemed to rack his body. And you have time. Even if it is just borrowed time. How much do you have left on your own ledger, Adrian Locke? Adrian looked up instinctively. Above his own reflection in a puddle near his feet, he saw the number 0. It was gray, dull, and absolute. The finality of it made his stomach turn. 0, Adrian admitted. He felt a strange detachment, as if he were watching someone else recount their own biography. It seems I am already dead. Not yet, the man said. A cough racked his frame, forcing him to double over. When he looked up again, his eyes were wide with a desperate clarity. But you will be, unless we make an exchange. I have 5 years left. 5 years of good days, clear minds, good food, no pain. I am willing to sell them to you. Adrian blinked. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, dripping cold water down his neck. He looked at the homeless man, really looked at him, seeing not a beggar but a vessel, a container holding something he had no use for because he was too busy dying.
Why? Why sell to me? You could find anyone else. You are looking.
Most people look away. They see the filth and they close their eyes. You saw the number. You understand the currency. That makes you a worthy buyer. He extended a trembling hand, palm up. It was calloused, dirty, but steady. 5 years, for a night of comfort, a meal that tastes like something other than ash, a bed that is not made of concrete, and for the silence of knowing I am not alone in the dark when I go. Adrian looked at the hand. He thought of Marcus Thorne and the 42 above his head. He thought of Elena's text message, cold and final. He thought of his mother's room, the lights still on, waiting for a solution that didn't exist. He had lost everything, but he still had agency.
What do I get? If I take this, what happens? You get my time.
I lose mine. The transfer is immediate upon completion of the terms. You feel it. I feel nothing but peace. That is the deal. Adrian hesitated. It sounded like madness. A transaction of lifespans, conducted in a rainy alleyway with a dying stranger.
And if I refuse? Then you walk away. You go home to your dying mother. You wait for your own zero to become reality. Or you find another way. But you will die, Adrian Locke. That is certain.
Adrian looked at the sky. The rain continued its endless drumming against the pavement. He thought of his mother's face, pale and drawn in the hospital bed. He thought of the thousands of policies he had calculated, the cold logic of life expectancy tables. He had spent his career predicting death for others, monetizing it, optimizing it. Now, standing on the precipice of his own end, he realized how absurd it all was. Death was not a statistic. It was a debt, and debts could be paid.
Take my hand.
The man's eyes widened slightly, then softened into relief. He reached out and grasped Adrian's wrist. His skin was cold, clammy, but the grip was surprisingly strong. "Do you have the money for a hotel room?" the man asked. "Somewhere decent." Adrian stood up, pulling the stranger with him. The man's legs were weak, his weight disproportionate to his frailty. Adrian slung the man's arm over his shoulder, supporting most of his weight.
I know a place.
It was a lie. He knew of a flophouse in the lower district, run by a man who didn't ask questions and accepted cash or credit cards that might still work for. 1 more hour. Can you walk? I can if you hold me up, the man replied. His voice was quieter now, less raspy. The panic was receding, replaced by a strange calm. Thank you, Adrian, for seeing me. They moved out of the alley, stepping into the slick streets. Adrian hailed a cab, his fingers fumbling with the change in his pocket. The driver looked at them with disdain, but didn't argue when Adrian threw a crumpled $20 bill on the seat. Lower District, Adrian instructed. The Blue Heron Inn. A nod from the rearview mirror. The car pulled away, leaving the neon glow of the financial district behind. Inside the cramped back seat, the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension. Adrian kept his hand on the man's shoulder, feeling the cab door opened with a clatter against the wet pavement. Adrian guided the man up the stairs, his arm supporting the dead weight of the stranger's torso. The Blue Heron Inn smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial bleach. The clerk at the front desk, a woman with sharp eyes and an air of practiced indifference, looked down from her monitor as they approached.
I need a room.
Placing a handful of crumpled bills on the counter.
Single. Clean sheets.
The clerk counted the money without looking up.
Standard rate is $100. You have enough for 4 hours. Give me the key.
He did not raise his voice. He did not blink. He simply stated a fact that could not be denied. The clerk hesitated, her fingers pausing over the stack of cash. She looked at the man slumped against Adrian, then back to the money. It was more than she usually saw in a night shift. "Room 4, she said finally, sliding a heavy brass key across the laminate counter. "Checkout is at 6. Adrian took the key and turned away. He did not look back at her. He focused on the stairs. The metal grating groaned under their combined weight. With every step, the stranger's breathing grew shallower, but his grip on Adrian's shoulder tightened, not in pain, but in recognition. They reached room 4. Adrian unlocked the door and pushed it open with his foot. The room was small, sterile, and devoid of personality. A single bed dominated the center, covered by a thin mattress and a polyester duvet that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. Adrian helped the man to the bed, lowering him onto the pillows. The stranger lay back, his head sinking into the fabric as if it were cloud softness compared to the pavement below. "Water," the man whispered. "And food. Something warm." Adrian went to the vending machine in the lobby, swiping the last of his cards before it declined. He bought 2 bottles of water and a hot sandwich from the nearby diner across the street. He returned to the room and set the tray on the small table. The man sat up, his hands trembling as he reached for the sandwich.
What is your name?
He stood by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. He needed to hear the name. Names were identifiers. Identifiers were necessary for records, even if this record was impossible. Owen, the man said between bites.
My name is Owen. Owen.
Adrian repeated. The name felt solid in his mouth. Real. Why 5 years? Owen chewed slowly, swallowing before answering. I have lived a long time, Adrian, too long for a body like this. My mind is tired, my spirit is worn out. I remember the sun on my face from 30 years ago. I remember the taste of wine that was not watered down. I remember peace. I do not want to die in an alley, cold and alone, forgotten. I want to die in a warm bed, knowing someone stayed with me until the end. That is worth 5 years. Adrian turned from the window. He looked at Owen, really looked at him. The number 1 above his head was still there, but it seemed less frantic now, steadier. More like a candle flame in a draftless room than a flickering emergency light.
And why me? You could have begged anyone.
Owen put the sandwich down on the tray. He looked up at Adrian, his eyes clear and bright. Because you are counting, Adrian. You are always counting. You see the value in everything, even when you think it is worthless. That makes you dangerous. But it also makes you honest. I would rather sell my time to a man who understands the market than to someone who just wants to feel good about themselves. Adrian felt a chill run down his spine, unrelated to the draft from the window. The stranger saw too much. He saw the actuarial tables, the cold calculus of survival that defined Adrian's entire existence.
Take your time.
His voice was flat, mechanical.
I will be in the bathroom.
He closed the door behind him and locked it. He turned on the shower, letting the hot water run for a minute before stepping in. The steam filled the small space, obscuring his reflection in the mirror. He looked at his own face, pale, hollowed, desperate. He waited for the sensation. The transfer. There was nothing. No warmth, no rush of energy, just the sound of water hitting tile. He stepped out of the shower and dried himself off. Dressing in the clean clothes he had bought from a pawn shop hours ago, he returned to the main room. Owen was asleep, his chest rising and falling in a regular, peaceful rhythm. The sandwich was half-eaten. The water bottle was gone. Adrian sat on the edge of the chair opposite the bed. He watched Owen sleep. He watched the number 1 hover above the sleeping man's head. It did not change. Not yet. The night passed slowly. He thought of his mother, still waiting in the hospital. He thought of his empty bank account. He thought of the 0 above his own reflection earlier that evening. Morning came with a gray light filtering through the blinds. The rain had stopped. The city was waking up, noisy and indifferent. Adrian stood up, his joints stiff from the chair. He walked to the bed. Owen was still asleep. His face was relaxed, unburdened by pain or fear. There was no struggle in his features. Adrian leaned over the bed, his eyes fixed on the space just above Owen's head. The number 1 pulsed once, a final rhythmic beat before it vanished entirely. At that exact moment, Owen exhaled a long, shuddering breath that seemed to release the last of his tension. Then he stopped breathing. His chest rose and fell not in life, but in the settling of muscles. His face remained peaceful, the lines of pain erased by a serene, impossible smile. Adrian stepped back. He waited for the nausea, the disorientation, or perhaps a sudden surge of energy that would validate the transaction. There was nothing, just the quiet hum of the hotel's ventilation system and the distant siren wailing through the wet streets. He reached out and closed Owen's eyelids with 2 fingers. The skin was already cooling. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen was cracked, the battery at 3%. He unlocked it and opened his banking app, a habit born of anxiety rather than hope. The balance was 0, of course. But beneath the red number, something else caught his eye. Not a transaction, but a notification. A system update from the hospital's online portal he had not checked in days. Patient status, stable treatment approved, experimental therapy initiated. Adrian frowned. He tapped the screen. The details were sparse, coded with medical jargon that meant little to anyone outside the insurance world. But one line stood out, bolded for emphasis. Funding source, unidentified transfer. Amount, sufficient for 12 months. He stared at the words. His mother was alive because someone had paid, because time had been transferred. He looked down at Owen's corpse. The homeless man lay still, a vessel emptied of its contents. Adrian felt a strange sensation in his chest, not warmth, but weight, a grounding force. He walked to the window and parted the blinds slightly. The sun was rising over the city, glinting off the glass towers of the billionaire club across the bay. For years he had watched those towers as if they were fortresses, impenetrable and godlike. Now, looking at them, he saw only buildings, steel and glass, finite resources. He looked back at his own reflection in the darkened window. Above his head, there was no number. There never had been for himself, but now he knew what they were. He knew the cost. He turned back to the room. Owen's clothes lay in a pile on the floor. Adrian picked up the wallet from beside the bed. It was worn leather, stained with grime. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph of a young girl and a library card expired 10 years ago. There was no cash, no ID that worked anymore, just the man he had been. Adrian took the wallet and placed it on the nightstand. He picked up Owen's shoes, worn through at the soles, and left them by the door. He took the trash bag from under the sink and began to clear the room. The half-eaten sandwich went in, the water bottle went in, the plastic wrapper of the hotel key card went in. He moved with methodical precision, every action calculated, every step measured. This was not grief. Grief was inefficient. This was cleanup. When he had stripped the room of everything but himself and the corpse, he picked up his phone one last time. He dialed a number from memory. A lawyer he had avoided for years because of the fees. It went to voicemail. He left a message. "This is Adrian Locke. I need to dissolve my current liabilities, and I need to set up a trust for my mother. Tell her the treatment is covered. Do not ask questions." He hung up and placed the phone on the bed next to Owen's hand. He walked to the door, his hand hovering over the knob. He paused, looking back at the room one last time. The sterile air hung heavy with the scent of lavender detergent and death. He felt the difference between his old self and his new self. It was not in his bank account or his job title, it was in his perspective. He was no longer a victim of the clock, he was its accountant. He opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The clerk looked up from her desk, surprised to see him so early. She glanced at his clean clothes, then at his face.
Checking out?
Her voice bored.
Yes.
His voice was steady, clear.
Please cancel any remaining charges on my card. They are no longer needed.
He walked past her and out into the morning light. The city roared around him, a machine grinding away at souls like his. But Adrian did not look down. He looked up, scanning the skyline. He saw the numbers above the heads of people rushing by, strangers he would never meet, but whom he now understood completely. A woman with 42 flickering above her head, a businessman with 15 burning steadily, a child with 70 glowing softly. He began to walk toward the financial district. He had no money, no job, and no future as defined by the world. But he had knowledge, and knowledge, he realized, was the only currency that mattered now. The Immortality Exchange was not a myth. It was an opportunity, and Adrian Locke was ready to start trading. As he walked, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. He did not need to know who called. He knew what he had bought. He knew what he owed. And for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of time not as a chain, but as a laver. He adjusted his tie, straightened. The rain in this city did not wash things clean. It only made the grime slicker, reflecting the neon advertisements for vitality treatments that lined the skyways like scars. Adrian stood on the corner of 4th and Grand, watching the world rush past beneath him. He no longer looked at faces. He looked at the numbers hovering above them. translucent blue digits that ticked down with indifferent precision. 5 years hung over a businessman stumbling into a cab. 2 months clung to a street vendor selling roasted nuts on the corner. It was a fortress of glass and steel, rising out of the financial district like a monument to arrogance. Inside, the air was filtered, heated, and devoid of the desperate scent of humanity outside. This was where the Billionaire Club met, though Adrian had no official title here. He was merely a ghost in the machine, a man who had traded his past for a future others could only dream of buying. Victor Ashford waited for him in the private lounge, sipping whiskey that cost more than Adrian's former annual salary. He did not look up as Adrian approached, his eyes fixed on the city's skyline where the Immortality Exchange was quietly rewriting the laws of physics and economics.
You're late.
Setting his glass down with a clink that sounded too loud in the silence.
The rain is terrible tonight.
Taking the seat opposite him without asking permission.
And the street vendors are complaining about the new ordinances. Let them complain. We are buying eternity, Adrian. What do you care about people who will be dead in 40 years anyway? I care about efficiency.
His voice calm, devoid of judgment.
And supply. The demand for verified, healthy longevity is outstripping our current acquisition channels. The wealthy are panicked. They hear rumors. Whispers of a market where you don't have to negotiate with the dying. You just buy.
Victor leaned forward. His interest piqued despite himself.
Rumors? Real ones.
He pulled a folded document from his inner pocket and slid it across the marble table. I found a warehouse in the old industrial district. Or rather, I allowed someone else to find it. There are people there, Victor. Desperate people. Victor picked up the paper, scanning the brief summary Adrian had prepared.
Death row prisoners, terminally ill billionaires looking to offload their remaining time. Debtors, soldiers with no family, criminals facing execution. People who would sell a year for enough money to feed their grandchildren for a decade. It's efficient, but it's dangerous. If the public finds out we are harvesting life like cattle, the public doesn't know anything, they think immortality is a myth, or a conspiracy theory. As long as the supply chain remains underground, it's just another luxury good. But we need to scale this. The current methods of acquiring years are too slow, too personal. We need a system.
A farm, the word hanging in the air like smoke.
You're suggesting we establish a formalized facility. I'm suggesting that if I do not regulate this market, someone worse will.
His gaze steady.
I have already spoken to a few contacts, high-profile individuals. They are willing to pay premiums for uncorrupted, youthful stock, but they want assurances. They want control.
And what do you want? Studying Adrian closely.
I want to build the infrastructure. I need your capital. I need your influence. And I need your silence.
Victor tapped his fingers on the table. You're asking for millions, Adrian. I'm asking for billions, Adrian corrected.
And in return, you get first pick of every new acquisition. You get to live forever, Victor, while everyone else rots. Where do we start? Tonight, we have a meeting with a representative from the penal system. He has 3 inmates scheduled for execution next month. They've been pre-screened, healthy, young, willing. Send me the details. And Adrian? Yes? Don't get sentimental. This is business, of course.
Standing up and buttoning his coat.
It's always business.
He turned and walked out of the lounge, leaving Victor alone with his thoughts and his whiskey. He had seen the numbers above the heads of the desperate in that warehouse. He had seen their fear, yes, but also their hope. The hope that selling a few years would save the ones they loved. It was a tragic transaction, but it was honest. Or as honest as anything in this city could be. The rain intensified, washing over his face, cold and indifferent. Adrian pulled his collar up and merged into the crowd below, a ghost moving through a city of ticking clocks. He had opened a door that the elevator doors slid shut, severing the connection to the lounge and isolating Adrian in a shaft of polished steel and humming silence. He checked his watch, not because he had anywhere to be, but because the habit of measuring time was now both a curse and a commodity. He exited on the ground floor and walked out into the alley behind the Millennium Club. The rain here was heavier, filtered through the grime of the city's underbelly before it hit the pavement. He hailed a cab, giving an address in the district where the desperate lived. If he was to build this farm, he needed to see the raw material. Not the sanitized reports Victor wanted, but the truth of what people were willing to give up when they had nothing left to lose. The cab dropped him at the edge of a condemned tenement block. Adrian walked the few blocks alone, his eyes scanning the buildings for the specific energy signatures that indicated high-volume transactions. He found the building easily enough, a squat, windowless structure with reinforced doors and no signage. It was hidden in plain sight, nestled between a laundromat and a pawn shop, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. He pushed open the door. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and stale sweat. 3 men stood near the reception desk. One was large, wearing a suit that looked borrowed from a funeral home. The other 2 were younger, nervous, their eyes darting toward the shadows at the back of the room. Adrian walked past them, his heels clicking on the linoleum. He didn't stop until he reached the inner office, where a woman sat behind a desk piled high with paperwork. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "You're early?" she said, her voice raspy from smoke or disuse.
Victor sent me to expect you at 8. I prefer to prepare.
Sitting opposite her without waiting for an invitation.
I've reviewed the preliminary contracts. There are discrepancies in the liability waivers.
The woman raised an eyebrow.
Discrepancies? In what way? The duration clauses are vague.
Tapping a folder he had pulled from his briefcase.
You're offering 5 years of longevity for $3 million. But you haven't specified the transfer protocol. If the subject dies during the extraction process, does the buyer get their money back? Do they get another subject? Or do they simply lose their investment?
Leaning back in her chair.
We don't have that kind of leverage, Adrian. These aren't voluntary donors. They're prisoners, inmates. They sign because they have no choice. If they die during the process, it's a medical complication. We don't refund death, then your product is defective, and defective products do not sustain a market. They create scandals. And I am not interested in scandal, I am interested in scale.
The woman narrowed her eyes.
So what are you suggesting? We negotiate with the state? With each inmate? No, we standardize. We create a tiered system. Premium longevity for premium buyers. Standard longevity for the mass market. And we guarantee continuity. If a subject dies, their remaining time is pooled into a central reserve. The buyer gets their equivalent in another subject, or they get a refund.
That's impossible, the woman said, shaking her head.
The biology doesn't work like that. Time isn't currency, it's flesh, and flesh degrades. Then we find a way to preserve it. We use the exchange's technology, we store it, we distribute it. But first we need to secure the supply.
He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. I'm not here to discuss contracts. I'm here to discuss the farm, the one in Sector 4. It's been underreported. You're hiding subjects there. Prisoners who haven't been processed yet. The woman's face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again.
Don't lie to me. I can see the numbers above your head, Clara. 5 years. That's all you have left if you keep doing business with Victor. But if you work with me, I can give you decades, maybe centuries.
Clara stared at him, her hands trembling on the desk.
Why are you telling me this? Because I need your cooperation. And because I'm offering you a choice, join me or become another pawn in Victor's game. And let's be honest with each other. You know which one ends with a grave.
Clara looked down at her hands, then back up at him. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also with a desperate hope.
What do you need from me? I need access to the Sector 4 facility, and I need you to bring me the list of subjects currently being held there. All of them.
Clara hesitated for a moment longer, then reached into her drawer and pulled out a key card. She slid it across the desk.
The security codes are in the file on your drive. Don't betray me, Adrian. I never betray clients.
Taking the key card.
I only optimize their outcomes.
He stood up and turned to leave, but stopped at the door.
Oh, and Clara? If Victor asks where you've been, tell him you were handling a supplier issue. He won't question it. But if he starts digging, I didn't think you'd actually come here.
Her fingers tightening around the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. She hadn't moved to open the door. Her eyes were fixed on the keycard lying between them like a loaded gun.
Victor thinks I'm in Sector 4 processing the new batch. He thinks a lot of things.
He did not pick up the card yet. He watched her pupils dilate, tracking the frantic rhythm of her remaining time. It was accelerating. Fear was expensive. That is why he pays you less than he should. He relies on your inertia. I rely on your ambition. Ambition? Clara let out a sharp, brittle laugh. The sound bounced off the sterile walls of the office, harsh and final.
You call selling 5-year blocks of my life ambition? You call standing by while men like you strip mine human flesh for profit ambition? I call it survival.
His voice remained level, devoid of the judgment she was clearly searching for. He stepped around the desk, closing the distance between them until he could see the fine lines of exhaustion etching the corners of her eyes. Look at the numbers, Clara. Really look at them. You have 4 years, 11 months, and 3 days left. If you stay here working for Victor's crude extraction methods, those years burn faster than a dry twig in the furnace. You know it. I can see the heat signature of your despair. Clara flinched, physically recoiling as if he had struck her. She looked away toward the darkened window that overlooked the alley. You're insane. Pragmatic, Adrian corrected. He placed his hand on the back of her chair, not touching her, but asserting dominance over the space she occupied.
The market is changing. The rich are no longer satisfied with marginal gains. They want decades, they want centuries, and they will pay anything to get them.
But they are starting to notice the inefficiencies in Victor's operation. The mortality rate among his suppliers is rising. That is a problem for him.
It is an opportunity for us.
Her voice dropping to a whisper, she turned back to face him, her expression shifting from fear to something colder, more calculating.
What exactly are you proposing, Adrian? You want to take over the supply chain? To regulate it? I want to professionalize it.
He picked up the keycard now, sliding it into his pocket with deliberate slowness. No more black market haggling, no more crude extractions that degrade the product. A controlled system, tiers of quality, guaranteed continuity. If a subject dies, their time is preserved in the exchange's reserve, the buyer gets their due, or they get a refund. It is clean, it is ethical, and it is infinitely scalable. Ethical, Clara repeated the word as if testing its weight. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands.
You're building a farm, Adrian, a literal farm, and you're calling it ethics because you're feeding your own conscience instead of your client's immortality? I am protecting the asset.
He moved to the door, his hand on the handle.
If I do not regulate this market, someone worse will. Victor is a butcher. I am an architect. There is a difference. Is there?
Clara asked. She did not follow him. She remained by the desk, her hands clasped tightly in front of her stomach. Or are you just the butcher who learned how to write a balance sheet? Adrian paused, his hand on the cold metal of the door handle. He looked back at her, his face an impassive mask. Does it matter, so long as I'm the one holding the ledger? He opened the door and stepped out into the corridor, leaving her alone with the humming silence of the office and the ticking clock above her head. The weight of the keycard in his pocket felt heavier than gold. He had seen the numbers above the heads of the desperate in that warehouse. He had seen their fear, yes, but also their hope. The hope that selling a few years would save the ones they loved. It was a tragic transaction, but it was honest. Or as honest as anything in this city could be. He walked back into the rain, the water soaking through his coat, cold and indifferent. He had opened a door that could not be closed, and now he had to build the walls around it.